So, my name is Bonnie Baldiff, and it's time for Wednesday night story time. And the name of the story time is called On a Beam of Light. Can you imagine flying on a beam of light? What about creating art with the beam of light? What about doing some other things with light, playing with light? So we're going to share a story about On a Beam of Light. It's about Albert Einstein. Interesting is he was 1 or 2 and did not speak at all. They thought he was special needs. Isn't that wonderful? Somebody that smart with special needs just because he was different than others. So let's enjoy the story. And we're going to be in for a special treat where buildings become an art show. The sky above becomes an art show. And people actually are using make their own art with sticks, lightsabers, Star Wars fans. So let's enjoy the story, and then we're in for this special treat. Called On a Beam of Light.
Over 100 years ago, as the stars swirled in the sky, as the earth circled the sun, as the March winds blew through a little town by a river, a baby boy was born. His parents named him Albert. Albert turned 1 year old and didn't say a word. Albert turned 2 and didn't say a word. Albert turned 3 and hardly said a word at all. He just looked around with his big, curious eyes. Looked and wondered. Looked and wondered. So different, but so dear. His parents worried. Little Albert was so different. Was there something wrong? But he was their baby, so they loved him, no matter what. One day, when Albert was sick in bed, his father brought him a compass, a small round case with a magnetic needle inside. No matter which way Albert turned the compass, the needle always pointed north, as if held by an invisible hand. Albert was so amazed his body trembled. Suddenly, he knew there were mysteries in the world, hidden and silent, unknown and unseen. He wanted more than anything to understand those mysteries. Albert started asking questions. Questions at home, questions at school. So many questions that some of his teachers told him he was a disruption to his class. They said he would never amount to anything unless he learned to behave like all the other students. But Albert didn't want to be like the other students. He wanted to discover the hidden mysteries in the world. One day, as Albert was zipping through the countryside on his bicycle, he looked up at the beams of sunlight speeding from the sun to the earth. He wondered, what would it be like to ride one of those beams? And in his mind, right then and there, Albert was no longer on his bicycle, no longer on the country road. He was racing through space on a beam of light. It was the biggest, most exciting thought Albert had ever had, and it filled his mind with questions. Albert began to read and study. He read about light and sound, about heat and magnetism, and about gravity, the invisible force that pulls us down toward our planet and keeps the moon from floating away into outer space. And he read about numbers. Albert loved numbers. They were like a secret language for figuring things out. But all that reading still didn't answer all of Albert's questions. So he kept on reading, wondering, and learning. When Albert graduated from college, he wanted to teach the subjects he loved. All the things he had read about all those years. But Albert couldn't find a job as a teacher, so he got another job. A simple, quiet job in a government office. An office where he worked with other people's ideas and inventions. He did his work very well and very quickly. So quickly that he had lots of extra time to think and wonder. Albert watched a lump of sugar dissolve and disappear into his hot tea. How could this happen? He watched the smoke from his pipe swirl and disappear into the air. How could one thing disappear into another? Then he began to figure it out. He thought about the idea that everything is made out of teeny tiny moving bits of stuff, far too tiny to see, little bits called atoms. Some people didn't believe that atoms existed, but Albert's figuring helped prove that everything in the world is made of atoms. Even sugar and tea, even smoke and air, even Albert and you. Even this book is made of atoms. Then Albert thought about motion. He realized that everything is always moving. Moving through space, moving through time. Even sound asleep, we're moving as our planet circles the sun and our lives travel into the future. Albert saw time and space as no one ever had before. Albert wrote down his new ideas, put them into envelopes, and sent them to science magazines. The magazines printed everything Albert sent. He hoped that scientists and professors would be interested, and they were. Very interested indeed. They asked Albert to come work with them and teach with them. For the first time in his life, people started to say, Albert is a genius. Now, Albert could spend all his days doing what he loved, imagining, wondering, figuring, and thinking. Albert Einstein is a genius. Albert thought about very, very big things, like the size and shape of the entire universe. He thought about very, very small things, like what goes on inside the atoms that everything is made of. He thought about mysterious forces, like magnetism and gravity. He discovered whole new ways to understand how all these things work. Too small to see, much too small. Everywhere Albert went, he would think and think. One of Albert's favorite thinking places was his little sailboat. He loved to let his mind wander as the wind blew him across the water. Sometimes, when Albert was having a tough time with a tricky problem, he would put it aside and play his violin. Music made Albert happy. He said it helped him think better. Albert even chose his clothes for thinking. His favorites were comfy, old, saggy, baggy sweaters and pants, and shoes without socks. He said now that he was grown up, no one could tell him to put on his socks. In the town where he lived, he became known for wandering around, deep in thought, sometimes eating an ice cream cone. Always recognizable with his long, wild hair, which by then had become quite white. Everywhere Albert went, he tried to figure out the secrets of the universe. And he never forgot about the beam of light that he rode so long ago in his imagination. Albert figured out that no person, no thing could ever zoom through space as fast as a beam of light. He figured that if he could travel near the speed of light, crazy things would happen. Only minutes would pass for Albert, while years and years went by for the rest of us. This idea was so amazing, people didn't believe it at first. But scientists today have proven that it's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. Albert thought and figured until the very last minute of the very last day of his life. He asked questions never asked before, found answers never found before, and dreamed up ideas never dreamt before. Albert's ideas helped build spaceships and satellites that travel to the moon and beyond. His thinking helped us understand our universe as no one ever had before. But still, Albert left us many big questions. Questions that scientists are working on today. Questions that someday you may answer by wondering, thinking, and imagining. Author's note: Albert Einstein was an extraordinary, fascinating person. I feel fortunate for the time I spent exploring his thrilling ideas and his intriguing universe while researching and writing this book. Einstein's life was so big, and this book is so short, I couldn't fit everything in. But here are a few last important and interesting things I want to tell you about. JB. Einstein's thought experiments. One of Einstein's most remarkable talents was his ability to visualize experiments in his mind. Many of his ideas came to him first as images, and only later were turned into words and equations. Some of his greatest concepts started as what he called a Gedanken experiment, or thought experiment, in which he would imagine events happening in time and space. His visions were full of people, light, and moving objects. From these visualized scenarios, Einstein would come to whole new realizations about the workings of the universe. Einstein's playfulness and laughter. Einstein loved jokes and clever, amusing tricks, and sometimes even toys. He was in many ways as open and playful as a child, and adored his conversations with young children. People who spent time with him often commented on his booming laugh, his sparkling eyes, and his pure ability to enjoy life's little amusements and surprises. And children seemed to love him as much as he loved them. E equals mc squared. This famous and remarkable equation is one of Einstein's greatest legacies. In those few simple mathematical characters, Einstein described how even the teeniest, tiniest bits of matter can be turned into astoundingly huge amounts of power and energy. And that was something that people never, ever had imagined was possible. The atomic bomb and Einstein's pacifism. In a series of strange twists of life and fate, Einstein's discoveries about matter and energy were the foundational ideas that led other scientists to the invention of the atomic bomb. Einstein never wanted the atomic bomb to be used, ever. Einstein was a pacifist, a person who believes in peaceful ways to solve the world's problems and thought wars were barbaric. He felt all war needed to end if mankind was to advance into the future.
So I hope you enjoyed that story about Einstein riding a beam of light. Can you imagine riding a beam of light and what that was like? And he didn't learn to speak until only had a few words when he was 3. You know, so all those milestones, so many kids are supposed to have so many words by the time they turn 1. And what he did was he asked questions and discovered things. So what questions do you have? What questions would you like to have answered? And what things are you curious about? And you can post those ideas of what you're curious about. Post them to Facebook. Let us know what you're wondering. I'm curious what you're wondering about. And some things that he used to help him when he was he would like to go sailing on his boat, seemed to help him whizzing through the air, or through the wind and the air around the sail, and the boat, of course, is whizzing through the water. He also, when he had a problem, he would play music. He said playing music helped him to think. And let's see some other things. This is about, it's called this the light show. It was in London in 2016, and the beams of light were up above you, around you. You could create art with beams of light as well yourself. And so let's take a look at that.
The fabulous, marvelous, brightest circus of all times.
You'll get over it. You'll get over it. You know. Amazing. Look.
Their colors.
I recognise it now. The stroke.
Well, it's all about sort of discovering how you can transform the public space with the use of light and that kind of interactivity, that to have a different kind of interactivity with the space around you, and how you can change it. You can draw with graffiti through a spray can, but we decided that we wanted to do it with the use of light instead.
People are not necessarily aware of what all is constituting this contemporary city, this contemporary society, what cell phone activity and all these kind of things are taking as a place within. And it gives them just another level of understanding of them.
You see, light is very interesting for artists to work with because in one sense you could say it's pretty, but I also think it can be very aggressive. And if you walk into a room and there's a television on, the first thing you look at is the television. It just takes you straight away. I'm really more interested in what happens afterwards and, whether what you've seen has some continuing kind of importance for you.
So I hope you enjoyed that. Add a comment to what that parts that you might like the most, and what would you do? Colors would you have if you were creating a light show like that? What kinds of things would you put above you and around you? What would you draw on the street with your light saber? Sort of like graffiti, but it only lasts for the moment. And let me know what you dream of and what you would like to do when you grow up. This is Bonnie Balda from Panic Public Library, hoping that you have a happy and healthy day, and leave a comment. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.